So we want to get started with Node.js. And for that, we first of all need to install it. To do this, visit nodejs.org and then there simply download this latest version. In my case, that's 14.11. It will change over time. When you're watching this, you might see a higher version there. It is important to note that these versions will change frequently, but they don't really bring many new changes. It's most of the time just behind the scenes optimizations and bug fixes. I will keep this course updated though, as I have in the past, but with that, let's install this latest version. For this, simply download it onto your system, and I'm doing this on a Mac here. On Windows, it's exactly the same. You can download an installer here, and then you simply walk through that installer. And again, here, that is the Mac installer. On Windows, you have a similar installer, and you simply walk through all the steps you have there, leaving all the default settings which are set up for you. You don't need to tweak anything there. Ultimately, this will then install Node.js on your system. This JavaScript runtime this course is all about, and we need Node.js to be installed in order to execute JavaScript code with Node.js, which of course is our goal in this course. So once this is installed, we can use it. And the first and quickest way of getting started with it and of using it is that you open up your default system terminal or command prompt on Windows. So again, here I am on Mac OS, so I'm using the built-in terminal. On Windows, you would simply open up the command prompt or PowerShell. And you can check whether Node has been installed successfully by running node-v to check the version of Node.js that was installed. And there you should see the version you just downloaded and installed. And with that, if that succeeds, if you don't get an error, we know that it worked. Now we can use Node. And one way of using it is to enter an interactive mode Node.js offers you, the so-called REPL, to which I will come back later. You enter this interactive mode by simply executing Node as a command now. This enters a new mode in your terminal or command prompt, and here you can run certain Node commands. You can use it as a basic calculator to do basic math there, and you could do more than that. You could run some JavaScript code in there. Again, I will come back to this REPL later, but actually this interactive mode might be nice to play around with Node. You're not going to use it to write real Node programs. For that instead, you will use a code editor and store your code in files and then execute these files with Node. So let's do that now. For that, let's quit this interactive mode by pressing Ctrl+C twice or Ctrl+D or typing exit as you see here. And once you closed that mode, let's actually create a new project, a new folder in which we write our first code. And I did just that. I created a new folder somewhere on my system and I opened it with my favorite code editor, Visual Studio Code, which you can find if you simply Google for VS Code or you visit code.visualstudio.com. Visual Studio Code is a free code editor which is great for web development, and it's available for macOS, Windows, and Linux, so you can use it on any operating system. Simply download it from code.visualstudio.com and then walk through the installer that gives you to install this editor on your system. As a side note, you can use any IDE and code editor of your choice, of course. Visual Studio Code is just what I will be using throughout this course and what I recommend that you use if you don't have another favorite editor, of course. With it installed, you can also open your project folder, which at the moment should be empty, with this tool simply by going to File and then Open, and then pick the folder in which you want to write your code files. Now, if you want to make sure that you got the same look and feel as I do, you can go to View, Appearance, and there you can control whether or not you see the sidebar, this activity bar on the left, and so on. So that's how you can customize this. And in addition, under Preferences, Color Theme, I am using the Dark Plus theme. And you can switch to this as well if you want to have the same colors. Last but not least, under View, Extensions, you can search for the Material Icon theme, which is 100% optional, but which will give you a specific icon look, which you will see throughout this course in my project. So that's why I will enable this icon theme here for me. Using it is optional though. And with all of that, we got the code editor set up, which we are going to use throughout this course, or which I am going to use. And now we can write our first Node code in a file. For that, I'll add a new file in there, which I'll name first-app.js, because of course it will hold some JavaScript code. In there, we can now write JavaScript code which can be executed by Node.js. And a very simple first code snippet we could write here is a simple console log statement which logs something to the console where we say hello from Node.js, for example. This is code which would run in the browser. It will also run if we execute it with Node.js. Now, to execute it with Node.js, we need to execute this file here with Node.js. And for that, the easiest way of doing that in Visual Studio Code is that we go to Terminal, New Terminal. This opens your default system terminal or command prompt here, integrated in this IDE and already navigated into this project folder. And then we can run this first-app.js file by running node and then first-app.js. So simply add the file name after node. And then you will not enter this interactive mode, but instead execute this code file, this JavaScript file, with Node.js. And therefore, you should see hello from Node.js here. Now that was a nice first example, but we can do more with Node. And to write an at least a little bit more realistic or more fancy application, we can also try writing some output to a file instead of the console. And for this, we'll leverage one of the built-in functionalities Node.js offers. And that would be the file system functionality, which enables us to work with the file system. For this, we first of all have to import it into that file to let Node know that we want to use this functionality. And the syntax for that is that we call require a function made available by Node.js, and we want to require the FS module, which is one of Node's core modules shipping together with Node.js. And I will come back to this import syntax and to the Node core modules in greater detail later. For now, we just call this, and we store the imported file system functionality in a simple constant here. And then we can use this file system to call writeFileSync, which is a method made available by this file system object, which we're importing. And this method here will write a file to our hard drive. And the argument it wants is the path to the file, including the file name. And here we could name this hello.txt. And then the second argument is the content of that file. And here we could store hello from Node.js again. So now this is our code here. I'm writing to a file by leveraging the file system module offered by Node.js. And if we now save this file and then run node first-app.js again, we should find a hello.txt file next to our script file, which contains this content. And that is how we can use Node.js. Now, obviously, we're just scratching the surface at the moment. We just learned about a brand new syntax which you don't know from the browser, and therefore we are going to dive way deeper into all of that over the next lectures and throughout this entire course.